Some men come and go in a woman's life like background noise, forgettable, replaceable, leaving no real trace. And then, there are men she never forgets. Even years later, no matter who she's with, his shadow lingers in her mind. Why? Because it was never about looks, money, or status. It's about something much deeper, the way he affected her psychology. Women are wired to remember experiences that stir their emotions, disrupt their patterns, or force them to see themselves differently. A man who knows how to tap into those areas becomes unforgettable. Not because she chooses to, but because her brain won't let her forget. That's the secret most men miss. They focus on surface attraction, when the truth is, what makes a man unforgettable lives in the subconscious. And here's the controversial part. It's rarely the nice guy. In fact, the men who live forever in a woman's memory are often the ones who were unapologetically themselves, who didn't chase, who left her thinking long after the moment passed. In this video, we'll uncover the 7 psychological triggers that make a man impossible to forget. Pay attention, because once you understand this, you'll see why some men become permanent chapters in a woman's story, while others are erased like they were never even there. 1. The man who leaves an emotional imprint. A woman may forget the compliments, the dinners, even the gifts, but she never forgets the man who made her feel. That's the first and most powerful secret: emotional imprint. Human memory is tied to emotion. Neutral experiences fade, but moments that trigger deep emotion, excitement, tension, passion, even confusion, are burned into the subconscious. The mistake most men make is thinking they have to be perfect, agreeable, or endlessly nice. But perfection is forgettable. What sticks is contrast. The ability to make her laugh one moment and challenge her the next, to be present but not predictable. A man who engages her emotions doesn't have to try to be remembered. Her brain does the work for him. This doesn't mean being manipulative or cruel. It means being authentic enough to stir genuine reactions. A woman may not consciously choose to keep you in her memory, but if you've shaken her emotionally, she'll never erase you. Think of it like a movie. Thousands of films exist, but the ones we talk about years later are the ones that made us feel something unforgettable. That's the same psychology at play here. Imagine 2 men. One takes her to a fancy dinner, talks politely, and drives her home. Nice? Yes. Memorable? Not really. The other takes her on a late-night walk through the city, teases her playfully, shares a vulnerable story, then leaves her wondering what he's really about. Who do you think she'll remember in 10 years? Always the one who left her emotions in chaos, not the one who played it safe. 2. The man who knows when to walk away. One of the rarest traits in men, and one women never forget, is the ability to walk away. Most men cling, they beg, they negotiate, they tolerate disrespect in the name of love or attraction. But a man who knows his value refuses to stay where he's not respected, desired, or prioritized. And that decision alone leaves a lasting mark on a woman's memory. Why? Because it flips the script. Women are used to being pursued, adored, and accommodated. They're not used to a man who can look at them, smile, and say, "If this isn't working, I'm done." That's power. That's control. And it's unforgettable. Walking away isn't about anger or revenge. It's about clarity. It's the strength to say, "I don't need you to validate me. If you don't see my worth, someone else will." That shift forces a woman to respect you, even if she doesn't show it immediately. And long after, she'll replay that moment in her mind. Here's the truth. A man who walks away when lines are crossed is far more attractive than one who compromises endlessly. She may not admit it, but in her heart, she'll always compare every man after you to the one who had the discipline to leave when it mattered. Picture this. A man discovers his girlfriend is constantly texting other men, dismissing his feelings. Instead of begging or fighting, he calmly tells her, "I don't compete for attention. If this is how you want to live, I'm out." Then he leaves. No drama, no second guessing. Months, even years later, she may move on. But she will never forget the man who didn't hesitate to walk away with dignity. 3. The man who challenges her mind. A woman never forgets the man who challenges her to think beyond the surface. Attraction isn't just about looks or charm, it's about mental stimulation. When a man pushes her to question, reflect, and grow, he sets himself apart from the crowd of men who only offer flattery or shallow conversation. Most women are surrounded by men who agree with everything they say, nod along, or avoid debate for fear of rocking the boat. But a man who dares to disagree intelligently, who can defend his ideas with confidence while still respecting hers, creates an energy that lingers. He forces her brain to fire differently, and that is unforgettable. Challenging her mind doesn't mean arguing endlessly or trying to dominate. It's about curiosity, depth, and conviction. It's the man who listens, absorbs, and then counters with something that makes her stop, tilt her head, and think, "I haven't looked at it that way before." That moment is powerful because it disrupts the autopilot of ordinary interactions. Even when the relationship fades or life takes her elsewhere, she won't forget how she felt when he spoke. Provoked, intrigued, slightly frustrated, but also drawn in. It's a rare experience that carves itself into memory. And here's the secret. Women crave men who keep their minds alive just as much as their hearts. Looks fade, material things lose value, but the memory of being mentally challenged by a man who stood firm in his truth, that endures. 4. The man who protects without controlling. There's a difference between being protective and being controlling, and women never forget the man who understood that line. Protection is rooted in care, respect, and strength. Control, on the other hand, comes from insecurity and fear. One earns trust and admiration, the other builds resentment. A man who protects without smothering communicates something powerful. "I've got you, but I don't need to cage you." That balance is rare. He can step in when needed, stand between her and disrespect, provide stability when chaos strikes. But he doesn't police her every move or demand ownership over her choices. Most men confuse dominance with leadership. They think protecting a woman means monitoring her, controlling her freedom, or dictating her behavior. But true strength is silent and steady. It shows up in the way he handles challenges, the way he carries himself, and the quiet reassurance he gives without stripping her independence. This type of man becomes unforgettable because he represents safety without suffocation. In a world full of men who either overextend their control or completely withdraw their presence, the one who strikes the balance stands out. He shows her that being with a man doesn't mean losing herself. It means having someone who adds to her world while still letting her own light shine. And when she looks back years later, she won't just remember the love or the passion. She'll remember how she felt safe and free at the same time. An experience so rare it imprints itself on her forever. 5. The man who doesn't beg for approval. One thing a woman never forgets is the man who stands firm in himself. The man who doesn't beg for her approval or anyone else's. Most men don't realize how quickly desperation erases respect. They think constant validation seeking makes them look caring, when in reality, it makes them look weak. A man who doesn't beg for approval carries a quiet confidence. He listens, but he doesn't bend himself into a pretzel to be liked. He respects her opinion, but he doesn't let it define him. That energy is magnetic because it's rare. Women meet countless men who try too hard, to impress, to please, to win points. But the one who doesn't beg, he becomes unforgettable. Here's the truth. Respect is never given to a man who acts like a servant for affection. A woman may enjoy the attention, but deep down, she loses interest. Why? Because approval-seeking signals a lack of backbone. And no matter how much she says she wants a nice guy, she remembers the man who could stand tall without needing her constant praise. This doesn't mean arrogance. It's not about ignoring her, belittling her, or refusing to listen. It's about balance. A man who knows who he is, who doesn't panic if she disagrees, who doesn't crumble if she disapproves, leaves an impression she can't shake. Because in a world where so many men shrink themselves for love, he stood solid. Years later, even if she's with someone else, she'll think back to that man who never begged, never chased approval, and never lost his self-respect. And in her mind, that standard will live on, long after he's gone. 6. The man who understands desire. Without words. There's something unforgettable about a man who doesn't need everything spelled out. A man who can read the unspoken language of attraction. Women never forget him because he's tuned into subtleties that most men are blind to. He knows that real desire isn't always shouted. Sometimes it's whispered in body language, in silence, in the way her eyes linger just a little too long. Most men miss this entirely. They either overanalyze or they force what isn't there. They want constant reassurance, constant verbal confirmation. Do you like me? Are you still into me? That kind of neediness kills attraction faster than anything. A man who understands without demanding words shows a different level of presence. He proves he's grounded, attentive, and confident enough to trust what's happening between them without interrogation. This is not about guessing games or manipulation. It's about awareness, the tilt of her head, the pause before she walks away, the softness in her tone. These are signals. And the man who sees them and moves with them creates moments that feel natural, almost inevitable. That's why she never forgets him. He's the man who didn't need to ask permission to understand what was already written in her silence. And here's the truth men don't want to face. If you need constant verbal approval to feel secure, you'll always lose to the man who simply gets it. Women don't crave a man who begs to be told what's obvious. They crave the man who reads between the lines and acts with certainty. Years later, she'll forget the men who asked 100 times if she was interested, but she'll never forget the one who understood without a single word. 7. The man who mirrors strength back at her. A woman never forgets the man who reflects her strength instead of trying to overshadow it. Most men fall into two traps. Either they feel threatened by a strong woman and try to tear her down, or they idolize her strength and place themselves beneath her. Both approaches fail. The man who stands out is the one who meets her strength with his own and mirrors it back. What does that mean? It means he doesn't compete with her, but he also doesn't collapse under her energy. When she's sharp, he's steady. When she's fiery, he doesn't flinch. When she pushes, he pushes back just enough to remind her she's not the only one with fire in her veins. That balance creates a dynamic she can't shake from her memory. Women don't respect men who crumble. They may comfort them, they may even pity them, but they don't remember them with passion. And they don't respect men who try to dominate every interaction either. That only builds resentment. The unforgettable man is the one who stands eye to eye, unshaken, confident, and capable of reflecting her strength while keeping his own intact. And here's the part most men need to wake up to. Strength attracts strength. If you fold under pressure, you're forgettable. If you try to crush her, you're replaceable. But if you can absorb her energy and send it back, calm, controlled, and unwavering, you become the standard she measures all others against. Years later, she may forget your words, even your face. but she will never forget the way you held your ground when she tested your strength. That memory lingers forever. At the end of the day, men, let's be brutally honest. Women don't remember the nice guy who bent over backwards for them, nor the man who worshipped their every move. They remember the man who left an imprint on their psychology, the one who challenged them, mirrored their strength, and made them feel something real. Here's the controversial truth. Love isn't what makes a woman never forget you. Respect does. She can love you and still walk away, but a woman will never erase the man she deeply respected, even if she tries. That's why it's not about chasing, pleasing, or begging for her attention. It's about embodying a strength, presence, and confidence that lingers in her memory long after you're gone. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been the man a woman couldn't forget? Or have you been the one who faded from her mind because you gave away your power too easily? Share your stories in the comments. I read them all, and I reply to as many as I can. The next video will expose the one thing women secretly test on men every single day, and most men fail without even realizing it. So click on that subscribe button and also turn on the notification bell so you would be the first to know when it's out. I'll see you then.